How's it going today, guys? We got another China quad we're going to be working on, so let's get right into it. Hey guys, we're back here in the shop working on another little Chinese quad. You can see we got it up on the jack, taking the one tire off, fixing some of the suspension components. We got one of the hubs here. The guy rolled it, the tire came off, and he did a little bit of damage to some of the suspension components too. So on this ATV, there's quite a few rubber bushings on the suspension and the steering for the tie rods. But on the right side of this ATV, the bushings are just completely destroyed. So on today's video, I'm going to show you how to fix these rubber bushings on a budget. By doing it this way, you'll be able to save yourself quite a bit of money compared to going out and buying all the bushings and replacing them that way. Okay, so we've lifted this from the floor up onto our little bench here. We tried to open the table up as much as we could to fit the frame inside of those two pieces of wood, but it only unscrews so much. So we took a strap, just a normal tie-down strap, and strapped it to the frame. So now if you come over here, you wiggle it, it won't move. So now we got tons of room to work on it. Should make things a little bit easier. And if we're looking at this tire on the front left, you can see that if we go down here, you can see the bushings, guys, on this one here. Those bushings are blown. This one down here, that one's loose, and then where the A-arm connects to the frame right there, that moves there. You guys can see that the A-arm is supposed to pivot like this. It's not supposed to flex up and down on the actual bolt. You guys can see there. So the bushing inside of that is gone. The bushing on that one is gone as well. And then I'm guessing they're gone at the back too. We went down to Napa and you know, we were just getting some parts for some other stuff, and they did not have any of the bushings that we needed. They don't have bushings that were that small. So if we take the tape off, we can see I just put that in there because it is so loose. So basically what you'll have is a metal sleeve like that. You'll have rubber going around outside of it, or like something like polyurethane, and then you'll have another steel sleeve that goes over the top like that. Now this bushing is supposed to look a little something like this. The problem is that the rubber or the polyurethane inside of these things, they get worn out, and you guys can see over time this thing's worn out. So now, like I was showing you guys on the machine, this little bushing in here will move up and down, and you know, if a kid's riding this thing, the tire is just going to be wobbling like that, and you can't have that. So we're going to punch the rest of this out, the rubber and the steel bushing that's inside of there. Same for this side, and we'll probably end up doing that as well for the other side. And on top of that, I took our little castle nut off with just a lock washer and like a thrust washer underneath it. But basically, if you pull this out right here, there's a little brass bushing inside of here, and I'm going to see if I can get the light onto it so you guys can see. But this bushing here, there's a little 45-degree edge that's been gnarled in. You can see there's a little 45-degree edge that's been, you know, put in just from it wearing down. They're actually supposed to look a little something like this. But over time, you know, that little edge wears down. So when you have this component in there now, that wobbles. And even when the thrust washer and the log washer and the castle nut is tightened down all the way, it still wobbles in there because that's been worn as well. And then coming back over to the machine, these bushings down at the bottom, you want to check those. And like I showed you on this side, these ones here, they were worn, and you know, all of the bushings down there, same problem. These things generally are pretty cheap, guys, and because of that reason, people buy them and they never put any more money into them. They never do any, you know, general maintenance. They never do oil changes. They never lubricate or grease the suspension, components, nothing like that. So over time, you end up getting problems like these. The bushings wear out and need to get replaced. My buddy Floyd, he bought this at an auction. He said he got it for, you know, pretty cheap. And that's the thing. He got it for real cheap, but it definitely needs quite a bit of work. Whereas if you were to go out and buy like a, you know, a name brand Honda, you're going to be spending more money up front, but the chances of the maintenance costs, they're going to be a lot lower, guys. And a prime example of that would be, you know, these bushings. Honda uses premium polyurethane bushings They don't wear out nearly as quick as these cheap little rubber ones that come from China. And that means that, you know, again, you're paying more money up front, but you don't have those maintenance costs that you're going to run into 1 or 2, 3 years down the road. So what we've done is gone out and bought some industrial rubber. Now you can get this from any hardware store. They usually have all types of lengths, and each piece may have a different thickness, which is actually good because not all bushings are the same size. Some are going to be a bit wider, some are going to be a bit thicker, some are going to be a bit taller. So each application will be different. Once you lay out your piece of rubber, you'll want to cut the piece the same height as your inner bushing. So from the top to the bottom. That will give you your height. Now, as for how wide to cut it, this will all depend on the diameter of your bushing. And depending on what size your bushing is, your results may be different than mine. So we had our outside bushing and our inside bushing, and we removed all of the rubber material from there. Then we cut to length our industrial rubber, and we laid it inside of the 2 steel bushings. And then, you know, we had a little bit of overhang, so we ended up cutting it. Now, you don't want a gap in there. This is just a, you know, a quick little diagram that I did. You want to leave yourself a little bit longer material so that you can always trim some off. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and just lay it in here, and if you have a little bit extra length, you can just cut it off with an X-Acto knife and then fit it in. Now, some of you guys are going to say, well, wouldn't that come out? Because this is press fit in there, whereas this is kind of just sat in there. So on these machines, you have bushings on, let's say, your suspension, top and bottom. You have bushings here. You guys can see, here's another bushing that we have. There's bushings in there as well. And some of these bushings were still good, guys, so we didn't change anything. But before, this thing used to flex like crazy. And then now, if I move left and right, nothing happens. If I move left and right up here, nothing happens. There's not even any play on the tie rods anymore, guys. So instead of spending all that money on bushings, basically we just used our industrial rubber, and none of that will come out because, as you guys can see, there's metal on each side of where these bushings are. So that industrial rubber that's in there, it's kind of just laid in there. It has nowhere to go left or right because it's trapped inside of there. Basically, what was happening was this inner circle, that's your steel bushing on the inside. Again, there's a steel bushing on the outside. Now, inside of that, they encase it with like a rubber bushing, and that just helps the inside flex left and right, up and down, and basically allows you a little bit of play. But over time, on these Chinese machines, because they don't use a polyurethane in the center, they use some real cheap rubber, and it ends up rotting away and just deteriorating over time. So what ends up happening is this little center bushing where your bolt goes through ends up moving left and right, up and down much more. So there's a lot more play. Now this process is fairly simple. Really, you just have to measure your bushing and then cut a piece of rubber to the length and then wrap it inside of your bushing, and basically the industrial rubber that you're cutting is just taking the place of the original rubber bushing. So by cutting it perfectly to length, you should be able to get a nice tight fit. So I'll do a before and after just to show you guys how well this works. So here's what it looked like before. You guys can see going in and out, applying left and right pressure. You can see that the A-arm bushings are just completely destroyed and they're moving. The wheel bushings on the tie rod, they were gone as well. So you guys can see that when the bushings are gone, there's just so much play. And to have something like this, guys, is really unsafe because you never know where that wheel is going to go. And if you're driving straight, you know, that wheel might want to go off to the left or the right. And you could end up having an issue where the ATV pulls one way or pulls the other when you don't intend it to. But after doing our little technique here of industrial rubber, you can see what it looks like after. That wheel is solid. There's no play in any of the A-arm bushings. There's no play in any of the suspension bushings. This thing is solid. There's no movement in the suspension or the A-arm bushings or any other bushings that we did this method on. Everything is tight, and that's the way it should be. Now, this might not be the best way to fix this issue, but it's a cheap way to fix a cheap ATV, as you can probably pick up a large sheet of this industrial rubber at your local hardware store for about $5. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope this method can help some of you that may be experiencing the same issues that we had with the play and the sloppy steering. At the end of the day, I believe only the results matter, not the way that you get the results, and it's quite clear that this method has proven results. Now, as for how long this will last, I'm not too sure, to be honest. But just so you know, this was done in the spring of 2017, and I haven't got a call back on this ATV yet, so I'm assuming everything still works flawlessly. So that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, think about subscribing, leave me a like. Remember, I upload weekly. Every week there's a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.